I'm Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
If Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
Yes, and today we are talking about a very... Let me get going. Why are you laughing?
I'm not laughing. What are you hearing laughing? I'm not laughing. Go ahead.
You're like juggling. All right, cut. Take 3. Start again. Fuck. I have to get in my mind frame. You know, I had to remember how I start these. Fuck. All right. Starting over. No, I'm just fucking laughing. Damn it. All right.
I'm going to leave this all in. I don't give a shit.
So after a couple takes, we are going to today's episode. We're talking about a very important and intriguing Reddit post. We are actually reading this from an article that was written by Cinemacure, but I stood corrected on my first couple takes that it's not actually a full article. Cinemacure actually just kind of put it all into one beautiful spot on their website.
Yeah, so there's a gentleman that's supposedly an insider or a source that posts on a subreddit that he handles, and this guy, Haran Sharif, which actually I kind of recognize that name, so I think we've done an article by him before.
Yeah, I believe so.
He basically starts it out with, believe this if you want to. This person has proven himself right with the way Thor and the Disaster Artist was promoted. I believe everything written by the OP, original poster, and this is exactly how Hollywood works. Here is what the insider had to say 8 months ago before the release of Thor Ragnarok and Justice League.
Before we get into this, I just wanted to put additional emphasis. Harim does say, believe this if you want to. I think we're kind of along that same train of thought. As far as, you know, a lot of people can say they're an insider, they're a source, they have a source, someone told them. Take it with a grain of salt. However, as Harim did put, he brings up some very solid points, some things that Matt and I have discussed in the past. So I'm kind of leaning more on the side of believing this.
There's some elements of this that I believe. It's kind of funny that this guy is an insider, but then he makes fun of insiders and sources in this post. So I did think that was a little funny.
Contradictory.
Yeah, a little contradictory, a little bit. But hey, I guess maybe he's talking about different ones. The article kind of goes into what a lot of people have speculated and what a lot of people talk about when it comes to the biased nature of the media, or at least critics anyway, when it comes to a lot of movies. The article, did you know that critics, journalists, etc. weren't invited to visit the set of BVS, which I did not know that, actually. I kind of looked up some things. I was like trying to find like Man of Steel set visit, like see if there was any set visits for Man of Steel, and I couldn't find anything. I even went farther back to like The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises and Batman Begins. I was just curious what DC films that maybe people were shunned by a little bit, or maybe they never got a set visit. And I could never find anything about a supposed set visit to those types of movies. So this is kind of interesting. And so the thing continues. Did you know that this made them mad? They felt insulted. They felt as if it was their right to be on that set. They are bitter. Some critics were extra motivated to paint BVS as a piece of shit purely because they didn't get their precious little set visit. That's kind of interesting. We're in a society now where this is an issue because this is kind of something fairly new. It didn't happen before with Dark Knight. It didn't happen before with other movies. And those movies were critically acclaimed for the most part. So this is actually something that's somewhat recent, it feels like. That these people were shunned, or at least something that Marvel/Disney started.
Right.
And then everybody felt that this is the norm. This is what every comic book movie needs to be doing. And Warner Brothers, maybe Zack Snyder, in this case, did not want them on set.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I thought was I was very curious about when I started hearing about set visits for Justice League. Because I was like, man, I didn't know that so much media actually visited the set to view, you know, whatever they had laid out for them, whether it was a scene or some props or, you know, models or things like that. I didn't know that. I thought that members of the media would be shown maybe an early version or a trailer or, half an hour, kind of like with Avengers, some like test screening things, but not necessarily a set visit. So I was kind of intrigued by that, but, I kind of put it on the back burner. This Reddit insider, if you will, kind of elaborates on that a little bit, and makes me a little bit more curious.
As he says, they made sure to invite them to the sets from that point on, making sure to invite the critics who were notorious for their bitterness.
Who the hell do you think you are?
Okay, well, you always get this feeling about that critics are maybe think they're bigger than what they are, and there's some great jokes that from like South Park and stuff that make fun of that fact as well.
Did you get him? Did you get him? Did you get him, huh?
Here you go.
Whoa.
Crispy risotto bites from Olive Garden.
How do you do it, Eric?
I'm a restaurant critic, Butters. I get whatever I want.
Gee.
So then the insider says, did you know that Warner Brothers are starting to play the same game as Disney? Sucking up to film critics may be unethical to you, but it's damn good business. Picture this. You're making a film, you don't invite the media to your set, even though they're expecting an invite. You don't give the media advanced screenings, you don't make them feel special in any way. Are they likely to be in favor or against? Now picture this. You're making a film, you invite the media to your set, you go above and beyond to make them feel like they're special, you give them advanced screenings and make a party of it with gifts and booze and promises of exclusives to certain publications. You make them feel like they're special and that they're part of something special. Are they likely to be in your favor or against? It's pretty simple. No studio pays the critics, but they sure as hell suck up to them. That's business.
So that's what I actually said in a comment to somebody, that when they talked about Disney pays the critics, I actually said, I don't think they legitimately sit there and hand them a check for whatever amount of cash. I think what happens is they get exclusives. They get special privileges. And I think Disney has done that very well. And it seems so obvious. To me, it feels obvious when you look at how people react when they're reviewing a Disney film. You just look at even some of the worst ones. They just like gloat over it. They're afraid to say anything negative about it, and really negative or necessarily terrible about the movie. And it just seems to be kind of a common trend. It's a lot easier to shit on another movie if it's not a Disney movie. And as he says here, when people say Disney pays the critics, they don't directly, is what it says.
Yep.
They treat them to a good time beforehand and afterwards, because people are more likely to enjoy a film and forgive the shortcomings if they are in a good mood. Ever watch a movie in a bad mood? Did it affect your viewing experience? Which is funny that they say that, because I actually had a story where when I watched The Force Awakens for the very first time, when it first came out.
I was just thinking that.
My girlfriend and I went to go see it, and The Force Awakens overall, as I've seen it, is a solid movie. It's not a great movie. It's not quite a good. It's not bad. It's just there. It's a solid movie. But when I first saw it, I actually hated the movie because there was this little kid, actually a trio of kids next to us, that were just obnoxious, yelling at the screen, eating candy about as loud as they possibly could, and it just infuriated us. It just made us so freaking mad at this kid. My girlfriend is actually very unconfrontational, and she even looked at the kids and told them to shut up. So it got to that far when it came to how these kids were. And I actually, when I first saw Force Awakens, I did not like it. I did not like it for that very reason alone. So when he says, you ever watch a movie in a bad mood, did it affect your viewing experience? Yeah, it did. It really did. And I can think of movies where people are laughing at stupid parts that just made us laugh, and we enjoyed the movie more. I remember Power Rangers.
Yep.
When that one guy just laughed after the kids get plowed by a train and murdered.
Yeah.
And in the screening that you and I were watching, this dude just starts belly laughing at the fact that these kids were murdered in a minivan, and it just made us laugh. And we couldn't stop smirking the whole movie because that guy just was ridiculous. And that made, I think, Power Rangers for us a little bit better than what it really was.
Absolutely. And I specifically remember using BVS actually as a good reference point. I want to say it was maybe our third viewing, possibly our fourth when it was in theaters. And so this was a theatrical cut. And I remember a much more empty theater than the previous viewings. We were down the road. I think we were watching it just before I was exiting the theater. And this guy specifically was there, and he's laughing at a lot of parts in BVS. And it's a lot of, the prompts and things that obviously you should laugh at. Most of the other viewings people weren't laughing at. And then I started noticing as the movie progressed, more and more people started lightening up around him and chuckling at certain parts, or you could tell they're enjoying the experience because of one specific guy who was, I think, the row or two maybe in front of us, just laughing at the whatever it was, the original Superman reference from Perry White, or just things that you would typically chuckle at in a Zack Snyder movie where you're like, oh, see, that's supposed to be funny. And he was enjoying himself a lot more, and that made people around him enjoy the film a lot more.
There's actually this video that I just saw recently where I don't know what theater this is, I don't know who this could be, but somebody had a video of Justice League when the movie's going on in the theater. They're videotaping the screen. And videotaping, that shows how old I am. So they're recording the screen when they're doing this, and the fans are just screaming and hooting and hollering at everything. When Superman gets resurrected, they're like, whoa! Like a bunch of drunk motherfuckers and shit, like they're at a baseball game or a football game.
They fucking had to be.
It was really weird, and it actually made me like love that part of the movie. Like that's already a good part of the Justice League is the Superman Justice League fight. Yeah. But just the way they were reacting was insane. It was just interesting. So the article continues. I'll give you an example of this happening right now. The Disaster Artist heard any conversation about it online. You've probably heard good things. Right off the bat, I'll say it's a good movie, but head over to Rotten Tomatoes right now and check out the rating. The people who have reviewed it did so after exclusive screenings. At these screenings, they are treated to cast interviews, talk stories, great experience. The film has a 93% right now, but the key thing is it only has 27 reviews. I didn't see this movie, The Disaster Artist, and I barely even know what it's about. It's about a terrible movie called The Room and the director and how his story making that movie. So it was a movie about making a movie. That is kind of telling how these people were treated to get such a high rating about this weirdo movie. And it's actually something that I would consider when it comes to Marvel movies in general. They probably show them a bunch of exclusive stuff, tell them a bunch of plans, meet with those people, meet with any of the actors and stuff like that. I could see being a freaking party. I actually kind of vaguely remember hearing a couple critics talking about that when they went and saw Star Wars The Force Awakens, was that it was like an amazing experience. They got to go down to, God, what is that called? They got to go down to that major theater in LA. It's like the Chinese theater. I can't remember exactly what it's called, and they were talking about it was like the most amazing experience of all time. And they, of course, gave Force Awakens like this huge rating, saying it was one of the best Star Wars movies of all time. So again, the experience and how the experience is given to you is really important, and it seems to be manipulating the system.
Well, I think the important part as well is, I think humans in general we're easy to please. You treat us like we're special even just a little bit, gift basket or whatever, and you're like, hell yeah, I'm the shit.
A hand job.
Yeah, even no spit.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just gonna go and check my mail over there.
You been lifting weights?
No, I don't think. No. I'm sorry, Peter. I gotta get back.
But the important thing to think about is what happens when the first critics are introduced, the first forms of media are introduced to scenes, or they go on a set visit, they write their reviews, the embargo's lifted, things like that, and they push it out there immediately. People are like waiting, and there's buildups for when the Rotten Tomatoes score is going to be released. And people like anticipate that. And so when it comes out super high, a lot of the general public is going to go into a movie preconditioned. That they're going to go into it going, oh yeah, this movie kicked ass. So then he continues, it's becoming more and more common. Warner Brothers is actually starting to catch on. They played their cards right with Wonder Woman. Studios just need to ensure that films earn that certified fresh badge and they let the rest take care of themselves. The film media knows how large a part they play in these films and how these films are perceived by general audiences. It's just like the political media. They take words out of context, use the magical, all-knowing, anonymous source, in quotes, and the ever-so-wise insider, in quotes, to print anything they want and fuel their narrative, and there's not a thing we can do to stop them other than to stop reading, which will never happen.
Which we've said before, avoid the clickbait. Don't fall for the clickbait. But then you see a title and you're like, well, you got to click on it because, like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, where does this stupidity come from? Then you realize just how much of a stretch it is, and you're like, you just wasted 10 minutes of your goddamn life. If you're a faster reader than a sixth grader than me, then maybe it takes you 5 minutes. But hey, it sucks. It sucks. And then he continues here. Don't trust everything you read on social media, which is a big thing. I really think that social media, in my personal opinion, I know we are on social media in some manner, and YouTube in some sense is kind of like a social media platform. But to me, social media is a big reason why a lot of negative things are circulated at a high rate, and how so much misinformation could be passed around so easily about people. Kind of blame it on social media. And it continues, especially the main areas of this site, meaning he's talking about Reddit. Big companies have a lot of money, and it doesn't take a lot of money to send a Reddit post to the front page. Stay attentive. The main subreddits are probably compromised. Moderators of forums all over the place are very much focused on certain agendas. Surely you have noticed it.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
So then he kind of bounces around talking about Reddit again, talking about the upvote system and how things can get pushed to the front page. They could have over 15,000 upvotes. And he says it doesn't add up because those votes aren't real people. It's marketing. Marketing will pump money into the initial votes a post receives because that gives it momentum and sends it to the front page.
So then he kind of continues, and I think this is a very important part. He says, I know this isn't exactly typical of this forum, but it's important. There will be people who scoff at this post, but you'd be naive to assume that the film industry and media is clean. Look at everything that occurs within political media and assume it's happening in film media as well, because it is. I know this. Because he's an insider. Duh.
You serious?
Continues, I love how naive people were to say Disney wants DC to do well more than anybody because it's good for the genre. And actually, Henry Cavill was quoted to saying something very similar, stating that both if Marvel's success is Disney's or is DC's success, and that's great for the genre. And while this insider says, grow up, stop pretending that business is friendly. Disney would much rather the opposition be endlessly smeared and their own product be praised. They'd much rather ensure that down the line they have zero competition to worry about. Studios are run by very rich suits.
Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh.
So actually, when it comes to this, I have an okay example. If you're a wrestling fan, you'll really be able to understand this for the most part. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was two major companies, two and a half. WWF, WCW, and ECW. And WCW and WWF at the time were roughshod. They were going at each other, full competition. And at that time, when I was a kid, it was some of the best wrestling that I've ever seen. I love those characters. It's fantastic. Now it's very watered down. What happened was that WCW went out of business, ECW went out of business, and WWF was the lone company. They eliminated their major competition for the most part. Did their show suffer from it? A little bit, and especially now because they don't have competition. Does Vince McMahon, the owner of WWE, want competition? Probably not. He probably wants to own the market completely to himself. He doesn't want to deal with New Japan or Impact Wrestling or anything like that. He wants the market to himself because now all the viewers are his. Whoever stays is his. As long as he brings eyes, he gets all the money. So I could see how what he's talking about makes sense because as a corporation, Because as they try to say in wrestling, what happens is they say, well, we compete against ourselves. That's how we stay successful. No, you don't, motherfuckers. You're complacent and you're just riding it out.
Yep.
You're just riding it out as long as people are willing to watch wrestling.
Or as long as people are willing to go see a joke fest of a Marvel movie, you're going to make money.
Exactly. So Disney's formula can be ran into the ground because it can keep going and it's being propped up by the media. So as long as the media does it, shows how great it is, and keeps pushing it like they are, and overhype a movie like Black Panther or Wonder Woman, those movies are going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, I think the important thing to take away from this, and this is something that Matt and I have discussed a lot in kind of our critiques of Rotten Tomatoes just in general, is that you have to take the time to look through everything, you know, with a different lens and really go, okay, we did it with Wonder Woman is a great example. My wife actually did it with Wonder Woman as well. Is this movie being pumped up because it's a female lead, or is it actually a good movie? And don't take what everyone says, especially critics, especially Rotten Tomatoes, as something that is solid gold, and kind of go into it wanting to make your own opinion.
Exactly. You don't want to have your opinion adjusted by somebody else you don't even really know. I mean, that's not how it works. And for the most part, Marvel movies can keep being successful for the most part. What it's not good for, what no competition's not good for, is for the fans, for us.
Yep.
That's who suffers in this. Disney/Marvel will always be able to milk out some kind of profit on these movies for a very long time, because there's always going to be people that are willing to do it, just like there's still people willing to watch the WWF now, or WWE. Same thing can happen with Marvel. If somehow DC just gives up on this universe, Fox gets absorbed by Marvel, Disney, then we just have Disney produced MCU movies. Yes, those movies will still more than likely make a profit, but the fans are the ones that are going to miss out, because we're just going to have the same formulaic shit, and it's not going to have any kind of variety whatsoever. And that's where the people lose.
We've talked about this before. That is when the possibility of superhero fatigue may set in, where you start getting, if you don't have Deadpool who's pushing the R limit, the Deadpool and Logan, you don't have DC who wants to take a darker, more serious approach, and Marvel who wants to be the family friendly. You have all these different areas that you can play in. If it's just one, people eventually are going to get tired of it, and being a nerd, or being a comic book fan, or being a fan of comic book movies is not going to be in pop culture anymore, and people are going to be tired of it. It'll eventually fade away, and then we're left with Batman and Robin.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
As Shane was saying earlier, there's also the groupthink mentality, you know, the cognitive bias that happens with a movie. We've talked about this. We have a video, the anchoring effect. If someone believes that this movie had positive reviews and the outlook of it is very positive, more than likely they'll go into it with a little less negativity, or they might just look at it in a different perspective, because they're like, oh, well, somebody else thought this was good, I'm sure, and maybe the shortcomings of the movie don't stick out as much to them because they're like, oh, everybody else likes it. It's like, it's the groupthink mentality. That's got to wipe away. That whole thing where it's like, if your opinion doesn't match my opinion, you're wrong, and yada, 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 so forth there. But basically, the ending of this post is very telling, and he pretty much ends, I think he ends it very well here. Stop being naive and assuming that agendas do not exist. Film media isn't pretty, and they have a lot of power. It's intoxicating. Over the past year, we watched the film media bully/condition the DC films into changing the tone of their movies. They have a lot of power, and they know it. Warner Bros. Knows it too.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, shit. And we've talked about this. I know for some of you out there, that'd be like, no shit, Sherlock's, you know, but there's some people that they need to see this kind of perspective. Some people may not realize how cutthroat some of this stuff could be, and how manipulative some of this stuff is. Rotten Tomatoes, is a manipulative system. Reddit is a manipulative system. The social media in general is a manipulative system. We've heard about bots. We've heard about all this other shit that's going on. They're able to pinpoint these people and be able to market to everybody what this movie is, or what this could happen. And Disney is an expert at it for the most part, except they keep fucking up with the Star Wars films, apparently. That's a whole different story at that. when it comes to these Marvel movies, they just know how to land it. And when it comes to the critics are just biased. And I'm sorry, but they are. They have a certain agenda, and their agenda is not for the people. It's for themselves. It's for their paycheck and how they're treated. And especially in this day and age, because apparently you have to coddle a critic before you show them their movie, before you show them your movie. And you have to make sure you stroke their hair and pet them real nice.
Give them that dry hand job, all the basic stuff.
Yep, it probably has a machine that does it for them. They sit there in the chair.
Oh, ouch.
Well,
this is why we'll never be able to monetize our videos.
Monetizing dry hand jobs is a very plausible thing. We just need to find the market, all right? It's out there. Somebody likes it. There's those videos of this dude's getting kicked in the dick for no reason and shit.
True.
There's weirdos out there for everyone. So that's going to conclude. Let's just end it on dry hand jobs and dudes getting kicked in the dick.
Perfect.
Think of that as your final moments.
There's no shame in that.
There we go. Bring it back, Shane. Bring it back. In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. You're one of very few to make it to the end.
Yes, thank you very much.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Comic Movie Marks Podcast and hit the notification bell. All these fucking YouTube channels say this shit, so I'm going to say it now.
Yes, it's perfect. And if you want to hear our full podcast, you can check out our podcast on iTunes or any other podcast subscription service.
Make sure you subscribe. Thanks again.